Okay, now we want to move on to looking at the past, at the history and development of the person's problems. And here there are again three main areas that we want to assess. First of all, what we call vulnerability or predisposing factors. What we mean by this is things in the client's past that made them vulnerable to develop a problem, but which don't necessarily just by themselves mean that they will develop a problem. What causes the actual onset of a problem is what we call precipitating events or critical incidents. So given that vulnerability, what actually made it develop into a real problem at a particular point in time? The answer is the precipitating events. And then the last aspect of this is modifying factors, as we talked about just now in looking at the current problems, only this time we're looking at modifying factors across time. So over the course of the problem, have there been times when it's better or worse, and what's been associated with those changes in severity? Let's look at each of those in a little more detail. First of all, vulnerability factors. As I say, what we mean by that is experiences that might have led to the development of problematic beliefs that might make someone more likely than somebody else to develop a problem, but which are not sufficient by themselves necessarily to cause a problem. For example, we know from Brown and Harris's classic work back in the 1970s that women who've lost their mother before the age of 11 are at much greater risk of depression in adulthood than women who've not had that experience. But this is not saying that all of those women will develop depression. In fact, nowhere near all of them do. They're just more likely to than women who haven't had that experience. And in CBT terms, what we're wanting to think about is what kind of beliefs might have developed as a result of those experiences. The precipitants, then, are what factors actually kick the problem into life. Those beliefs might have been lying dormant, not causing any particular problem for a long time, but they cause problems when they run into specific later events, and we want to understand what those events were. They may be sometimes single events, perhaps most obviously in post-traumatic stress disorder, but more often in ordinary clinical practice, it's most commonly a series of events, any one of which the person might have coped with okay, but they run into problems when they meet several of them in a fairly short space of time. And these events often match the pre-existing beliefs in some way. So, for example, if as a result of losing their mother before the age of 11, suppose a woman develops a belief along the lines of people I love will depart, they won't stay around, I can't rely on them to be here, then they may cope perfectly well with that belief, but perhaps a matching event might come along, for example, the loss of some other important relationship in later life. And the way that event fits with the pre-existing belief may be enough to cause a problem. And then lastly, as we said, we have modifiers, just as we looked earlier at what currently makes a difference to how severe the problem is. We can, in a similar way, look at what made a difference over the course of time. Obvious things that often may make a difference are changes in relationships, role transitions like leaving school, going to university, retiring, and so on. Changes in responsibilities, perhaps at work or through becoming a parent, and so on. Let's just try and illustrate it by using an analogy. We talked in a previous presentation about a fire. Suppose we use that analogy again. Then fuel is a vulnerability factor for a fire. Paper, in this case, is a vulnerability factor in that if there is loose paper lying around, there is a potential for having a fire that would not be there if the fuel was not lying around. A source of heat, for example, a match, would be the precipitant in this analogy. So given the paper and the match, put the two together and we may cause a fire. But neither one of them alone would be enough to do it. The paper could sit there perfectly happily for months or years unless it happens to run into a match. Once the fire has started, then modifying factors may make a difference to its intensity over time. So, for example, a wind blowing may make the fire flare up, or water may make it die down. So, let's have a look at the part of Lucy's interview where we're talking about some of her past history. Let's talk a bit about how you got to this point. When did these problems begin? How long has this been happening?
I mean, I think my GP asked me this, and it actually took some thinking. I wasn't quite sure. But I kind of worked it back to about 2 years ago.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, at the time I was living with my boyfriend, and it was kind of, I was working, and I come home from work, and I just couldn't seem to get calm again, couldn't seem to relax.
Uh-huh.
And then I started, I didn't really want to go to work after that, and
Right.
started to feel, get quite nervous and quite anxious, and I started sort of worrying about, if I was doing my job okay, and yeah.
Okay. So it's about 2 years ago, and I mean, the way you're describing it makes it sound as if it was quite sudden. Is that right, or can you see, in retrospect, that there were things leading up to this?
And I think I've always been a bit of a worrier. I've always
Uh-huh.
worried about, is this quite right? And I think I've always sort of checked with people whether what I was doing was okay, and just run it past them to make sure this is all right. At school, I might check with the teacher. Is this okay? Is this what I was supposed to do?
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I guess I've probably been thinking about what I was doing was all right.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess I kind of got through school and I started working, and I was doing quite well at my job. It was quite good,
Mm-hmm.
but then I guess I started worrying about whether I was actually quite good at it. And
Uh-huh.
I mean, my boyfriend and I were having some problems at the time as
Okay.
well, and it was quite unpleasant to come home after work, and I didn't really want to. But
So when you say you and the boyfriend were having problems,
Yeah.
do you mean there were lots of arguments? Or?
yeah, I mean, he's got a bit of a temper, and he's quite angry,
Uh-huh.
and my friend said it was quite sort of nasty, and I wouldn't go so far as to say it was abusive, but it was quite unpleasant, and
Uh-huh.
sort of saying some quite sort of hurtful things.
Right. You said one of your friends said,
Yeah.
and then you said that you didn't think it was abusive. Did your friend think that it was abusive?
Yeah, I mean, she thought it was verbal abuse, but
Yeah.
I mean, don't know what you call abuse, but anyway, it
Yeah.
wasn't very nice.
Okay. And this was what criticism of you that?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, he basically said he thought I was, I'd do something wrong, or perhaps I'd cook something and he'd say it was crap, and he never thought that I was very good at anything. And yeah, I mean, we get into these sort of arguments about really stupid things, and he'd sort of shout insults like I was useless and no
Right.
good, and
Right.
yeah.
And did it just stay at shouting and verbal criticism, or did he hit you?
No, I mean, definitely would have left a lot sooner if that had happened. But no, it was just really foul, sort of
Okay.
foul mouth.
Yeah. So that had been going on in the background for a while
Yeah.
before this day 2 years ago, is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
For how long, roughly? I mean,
I
we're
mean, we're-
talking weeks, months?
And we were together for about 4 years, and he's always been quite. He's always had a bad temper, but I mean, it didn't happen quite as often.
Yes.
And I mean, I kind of ignored it and just thought, right, people lose their temper all the time. They say things they don't mean, and then they retract it. But I guess, about 2 years ago, sort of, I really started to notice.
It was getting much worse.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think you said that also at around this time you were beginning to worry more about your work and,
Yeah.
and whether you were doing it well enough. It may not be possible to answer this, but I'm just wondering, do you have any sense of, was that independent of what was going on with your boyfriend, or was that because of what was going on with the boyfriend?
I don't really know.
Right.
I mean, looking back on it, it's been a year since we were living together. I kind of think about it differently, and I know that it wasn't a good relationship to be in, but I mean, I don't know. It was such a mess. It was such a. I mean, there's loads of emotions, and I was always quite angry, and I don't know how these arguments even started.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
but I come home feeling really sort of low and quite stressed, and
Yes.
I mean, it probably contributed to it. It probably wasn't my fault. Some of the time, most of the time, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of difficulty with your boyfriend, and then it began at work, and that's when you started to get anxious about going out and
Yeah.
so on.
Yeah.
And how did it develop from that point? I mean, did the whole thing develop very quickly, or was it a gradual descent, or what happened after that?
I mean, my manager wasn't very supportive, and she didn't really. I don't think she understood if I was feeling, anxious, and if I wanted to leave the room, and just she didn't really get it. I don't think. If I said I was feeling, not very well, and she started saying things like, "Well, I had to give my all at work, and I had to sort of be there, and I wasn't there," and she sort of noticed that I wasn't really myself, and I was quite stressed, and I was always thinking about these foul goings on at home. And my friends were sort of on my case and thinking, you really ought to sort of change what I was doing, but it's a big change. I just couldn't sort of stand the face of any more big changes. But I did it. Yeah, and so.
Yeah. And when did it start? How long did it take before it had kind of got to the point of avoiding going out and not wanting to go to supermarkets and so on, as it is now? How long did it take to get to that point?
Well, I mean, I'd go to the supermarkets sort of after work quite late, and I'd sort of avoid being home and avoid being, at Tesco sort of around 5 or 6 if I went a bit later. And then I guess when I moved back home, I didn't really have to go out as much.
Yes.
And I didn't have to do social things with my boyfriend's friends. And I didn't have to, I'd quit my job at that point. And so, I guess
so a lot of the kind of external constraints on what you could avoid were diminished when you moved back.
Exactly.
Right.
I don't have to go shopping anymore.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think I can perhaps guess some of it, but can I just ask you, what impact did all these events with your boyfriend and at work and so on, how did that change the way you thought about yourself or other people? Or?
Well, I guess because, if you don't work, you have quite a lot of time to sort of stay at home and think. And I was sort of thinking about, I was thinking, where's my life going? What am I doing with myself? Have I done anything that's worthwhile? Am I ever going to be able to do anything that's worthwhile? And I guess I'm just not.
So a lot of kind of self-questioning.
Yeah, but I mean, I quit my job, and that's just, it was a good job, and I was good at it, but, I was just making all these mistakes, and, I sort of wasn't sure that I was good at it anymore, and, I wasn't sure that I was good at, sort of keeping up a relationship either. I couldn't do that, and I couldn't keep the place clean, and I couldn't sort of, be sociable when friends came around, and, it was just too much, and I just, so safely be at home. It's better, there's less stress, but it's
it
not
almost
good
sounds
for me.
as if you were kind of starting to think that you were no good at anything.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, I wasn't, my manager noticed my I mean, what I was doing at work, people noticed that it wasn't as good. I'd hand in a report and it wouldn't be, there'd be mistakes and, I'd forget things and I'd show up late and so I used to be really good at it.
So you were actually getting to the point where you were so worried about it that you actually were making mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, thinking back, I guess it's 'cause I was so stressed.
Yes.
But even now, I mean, I just don't think I can go for another job. I don't think they're just going to think, why can't she get a job? Why can't she keep a job?
Okay. And is it possible to go back any further than that? Are you aware of anything from earlier in your life that might have made you perhaps vulnerable to feeling self-critical?
Well, my sister's quite good at everything.
Is she?
Yeah, and I think I was always sort of thinking, well, she's always really good at everything she does. Everything she touches turns to gold.
She's older than you, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. And her teachers always liked her, and she's always before me in school. And every time someone met me, they'd say, well, you're so-and-so's sister. Are you going to be as good as her at this? It's really difficult. So I'm not her, and So
you always thought, I can't be as good as her.
Yeah, and they're going to, when I do a test, when I write a paper, people are going to just think, well, it's not as good as hers.
What was your parents' attitude towards you?
Well, my mum's quite supportive. She's always been sort of listening to me, but when she thinks I'm good at what I can do. But I mean, it's kind of like it's not because it's me. It's not as good as Samantha's. So because it's what I can do, it's the best that I. So it's, if you've got a standard of people, I'm in my own standard. It doesn't compare to hers.
Do you mean in the sense that it almost feels to you as if they kind of make allowances for the fact that it's you, not
so,
Samantha?
Oh, Lucy's all right with that. Lucy could do that. As opposed to, they could both do that, or Lucy could do that too.
Yes.
I've never heard that sort of thing. It's always Samantha's, amazing at that and top mark at that, and but Lucy could do that. It's very different.
Okay. Anything else in terms of how things were in the family when you were younger?
Well, I don't know. I guess no one really thought I could amount to anything, and just sort of thought, I'm just normal. I remember my mum telling me when I was quite young, it's okay to be average, and I guess I kind of thought, well, it's going to be average.
That meant she thought you were average.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess if I'm not even doing what I can do, then I'm below average.
Okay. Can I just go back to something I meant to ask you earlier? You were talking about how things were when things were getting bad with your boyfriend and the work was going wrong and so on. It just struck me as you were talking about that. I just wonder what your mood was like at that time, because it sounds as if you may have been getting quite depressed at that stage. Do you think that was so?
Well, I don't really know what depressed is. But I guess I was feeling pretty low, and I was thinking, I'm absolutely no good at anything, and I had lots of thoughts like that. I'm just rubbish. It's just no good. And I'm not thinking that quite so much now, but yeah, it was a pretty low period, really.
Yeah.
Pretty glad I went home.
So although things may be as bad or maybe even worse in terms of the anxiety and the panic now, they're not so bad in terms of feeling low in that way. Is that right? Okay. Have you ever at any stage had thoughts about hurting yourself?
No. Maybe too chicken.
All right. I think that's most of what I need to ask you for the moment. Is there anything else that you think is important that I've missed out?
No, I think if you've asked what you need to, then yeah, you probably know best.
So we'll leave it there for the moment then, and we'll think how to take this forward.
Okay.
I mentioned earlier the order in which we go through these different parts of the assessment. It's important, I think, to be clear here that there isn't one single right way, for the simple reason that both therapists and clients vary quite a lot. So, for example, although most clients may be happy to start off with talking about the current problems, some clients come along very clearly wanting to tell their story in chronological order. Having said that, if all other things are equal, my personal preference is to start with the current problems, simply because it helps to orient me to everything else, so that I have a much clearer idea of what other questions I want to ask about the past and about problem development and so on, if I've got a good handle on what the current problems are. Lastly, as I said before, the structure in real life, as you've probably noticed in the video clips, is not as clear and rigid necessarily as I've presented it here. We often mix up different components quite closely. One other important note about the therapeutic relationship. In this presentation, we're focusing particularly on the technical aspects of the kind of information you need and how you're going to put that together and so on. But it's very important not to lose sight of the fact that this is not the most important aspect of an initial interview. Far more important, at least if there's any conflict between the two, is developing a good therapeutic relationship. If you forget some question or leave something obscure that you need more information about, if you've got a good relationship, then you can always come back to that question in a later session. On the other hand, if you forget the fact that there's a human being sitting opposite you and don't develop a good relationship with them, then your client may never come back and you won't have a chance to ask any further questions. So if there's ever any conflict between these two parts of the assessment interview, it's the relationship that should always take priority. That's it for this part of the presentation. In the last part, we'll look at how to bring together all the information that we've gathered so that we can work on developing a formulation.